I think it's safe to say we can kick things off. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Radzowski. I'm Sales and Marketing Coordinator for Turnkey Technologies. From everyone here at TTI and HP Aruba Networking, we want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And if you're on the call today, you aren't familiar with Turnkey Technologies, we are a global provider and value-added reseller of networking and security solutions across all vertical markets. We're your one-stop edge-to-cloud service provider. And at TTI, we don't work with every vendor under the sun like our competitors do. It's important to know we carefully select and evaluate our partnerships, and we only choose to work with best-of-breed technologies such as HPE to deliver to our customers. TTI has been recognized by HPE and has been invited to be part of the HPE Global Ambassador Program. It's an elite group of 56 global partners that are shaping the future of the business. But when it comes to real value add, our key differentiator is the way we support our clients. TTI provides complimentary 24/7, 365 help desk support for the first year with every installation that we do. This is over and above your manufacturer support, and it's all handled in-house by our award-winning TTI engineers. It's our passion and our mission to ensure your solution runs flawlessly. We don't know anyone in the business that provides this level of support, and it truly does set us apart from any other technology partners you may have worked with in the past. The reason we're able to do it, we trust in the products we offer, and equally as important, we trust in our experience and the design that we create for you. On top of that, we've got the greatest team of engineers on staff in the office ready to help. They're all deeply certified, both with the manufacturers we support, but also agnostically. And our dedicated clients are always telling us that our engineering team has become an extension of their team. And really, that's our goal. We believe you couldn't make a better choice than to partner with TTI for your networking and security needs. You're invited today because we're interested in meeting with you and your team in the near future to see where we can help. But more on that later. Today's presentation is on access security and SSE. We encourage you to put any questions you have into the Q&A during the event, and they'll get addressed either live or when the session concludes. You were all promised a complimentary gift today. I'll be sending out a questionnaire directly following the presentation to collect your shipping information. Just give me about 2 to 3 weeks to receive your gift. Today, our presenters will be Roger Clark and Nathaniel Scriven. They are both SASE SEs for HP Aruba Networking, as well as Steve Botlagador, a channel account manager for HP Aruba Networking. And we're joined by our very own HP Global Ambassador, Chris Vole, the VP of Solutions Architecture for Turnkey Technologies. I'll let the experts take it from here. So without further ado, here's Roger and Nathaniel and Chris to kick things off.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, just to make sure, can everyone see my screen? Oh, you're not?
Not yet.
Let me see. Let's try that again. Here we go. And now everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
All right.
Perfect. Okay, good. So we're going to be talking about Aruba's SSE solution, Security Service Edge. So let's go ahead. We'll get started going through here. There we go. So a lot of times we look at the marketplace today and look at the different solutions people are proposing. You know, a lot of times we're basically trying to take an older, perimeter-based approach to securing, access from our workforce that, used to always be in the office, but is now kind of distributed in the wind, right? They could be working from home, they could be working from anywhere. And we're also trying to secure different resources. Our resources aren't necessarily within our data center any longer. Now they could be in the cloud, they could be, somewhere else, again, scattered to the wind, so to speak. So we end up with like a patchwork of different vendors and solutions to kind of hold it all together, to secure it and protect those corporate resources. And it really makes things very complex and very difficult to both, again, secure and monitor for the long run. And it makes it difficult on both the administrative staff and the user staff, user community as well. And that's basically what Gartner is saying here. And if we look at the way things have actually, kind of occurred over the course of the last several years, if we look at just a handful of years ago, most of our resources existed within a data center, right? And we had branch offices, headquarters offices, factories, whatnot. And we were all connecting to the data center and we're passing traffic through the data center when we wanted to get out through, to those cloud-based resources. So again, whether it be, whatever it is that we're using out there. It was very easy to, much simpler to secure that traffic because everyone was already in kind of this walled garden, and we controlled the drawbridge that allowed people to get out to the rest of the world. But then things started to change, right? We started using, software as a service sort of applications, whether it be Salesforce or Workforce or whatnot, which offered better scale, better availability. But it really kind of changed the model of where those resources are. So we've adopted SaaS, we've adopted public cloud resources, part of that in an effort to reduce CapEx expenses. It made it easier to rapidly deploy resources. So now if I needed to spin up a new application or I wanted to try something new, I didn't have to go, budget for a server or some sort of server infrastructure and find out how to get this thing racked and stacked and connected and made available. It was very simple to take advantage of these public cloud resources. And then, again, we're adopting mobility. So people connect from everywhere. We don't necessarily work in an office anymore. I mean, we can probably we could take a poll on this call. I bet there's very few of us who are actually sitting in a corporate office right now. We're all kind of scattered to the wind, and we're working remotely. But again, that kind of raises the bar in terms of how do we secure our access to all these different resources. All right, and if we look at traffic flows, again, we're going through the data center to get to all of these things. That's not necessarily the optimum traffic flow that we want to use, because again, we aren't in the office. We don't want to backhaul, our traffic from the East Coast to the West Coast so we can hit a resource that's somewhere in the Midwest, right? It's just not very efficient. So that traditional security model, using appliances to secure that kind of traffic flow isn't necessarily the best way to go about doing things. That was built for backhauling traffic to the data center, which is not necessarily what we need any longer. And again, there are new threats. There's an increase in advanced threats that are exploiting legacy network security architectures. So again, we need to be aware of that too, and how we defend ourselves against these new advanced threats that are now on the scene. So if we look at some of the solutions, again, we have virtual firewalls. So now we have, instead of having that one firewall in the data center, now we've got virtualized firewalls that are out there in the world, and we're all trying to connect through those. And it makes it really much more complex for managing all those different firewalls. We have multiple different points that we have to touch, configure, maintain, check for compliance, so on and so forth, and increases the cost. So we have more appliances, we have more hardware needs, we have more licensing costs, everything associated with it. Again, it makes it much more expensive and difficult to meet the needs of the organization. And there's inherent risk because traffic is still being placed on the network, right? So people are still coming into the network and then being shuttled out to some sort of remote resource. So it's not an optimal traffic flow, and we're still introducing risk because people are getting onto the network when they're not really trying to get anything that might be within the corporate data center. They just might be using that as kind of a U-turn to get back out to corporate or get out to a cloud-based resource. So virtualized firewalls don't necessarily solve the need for zero trust access, and not necessarily providing a great user experience, along with that. So a modern approach is using the security service edge. So providing a unified service, and with Aruba's SSE solution, one simple, easy to use interface to provide multiple different types of connectivity. So within the Aruba solution, there is a unified zero trust network access engine, secure web gateway, cloud application security broker functionality, and digital experience monitoring functionality, so that we can actually see what an end user is what they are experiencing as they're actually using the resources. And we can secure all access for all resources. So whether those be a private app in a data center or in a cloud-based data center, it could be a software as a service sort of application, we can basically control access to all of those and secure all those different resources wherever they might be. So again, whether it's in that, whether there's our resources sitting in AWS, or whether it's Salesforce just in the cloud or whatnot, again, we can provide connectivity and securely access those resources while providing maintaining control and visibility into what's being used. We also have an intelligent cloud global scale. So we have smart routing across 500 different edge points, across the globe, so that when someone hits an on-ramp and gets connected, they end up with, again, a good user experience, because we want to make sure that our end users are having that good experience. If they're not having a good experience, for the IT guy, the phone rings, things don't, the phone starts ringing, it's not the day is not going well at that point. I always think that for the IT guy, it's a great day when the phone doesn't ring, right? Because nobody's having a problem, which is what they really want. And again, being on that global backbone, which is provided through AWS, Azure, GCP, et cetera, they get access to all those different resources. So some of the benefits of SSC include granular zero trust access to business applications. So we eliminate the attack surface of reaching those resources, because we broker that connection from that end user to that end resource. So that end user can't actually get to that resource. What happens is the information of that resource is provided and brokered to that end user. And as part of that, we are enforcing a least privilege access. So that end user only gets access to the resources that they are supposed to have. All right. There's no moving laterally, because they're into the data center, because they're never in the data center. We actually hold them kind of at arm's length and serve them what they're supposed to get. It helps protect against ransomware. Again, if that end user can never get into the data center or onto the corporate network in that sense, that malware can't spread. It can't move laterally within the data center, because it's never in the data center. It's always held at arm's length by the SSE cloud. And then also, because we're brokering all connections, we can provide data loss prevention services, so DLP services, because we're brokering it. We can actually see anything and everything that's traversing the cloud. We can perform data leak prevention services through regex, and even more extensive with optical character recognition and other services as well. So we have a really fine-grained control over what an end user can do and what they have access to. It helps keep end users connected from anywhere. Again, we're not, our workforces are not necessarily sitting in one of our offices in the headquarters. They are, scattered to the wind, so to speak. And we need to be able to have them have a good experience and be able to connect to those resources. So one of the things that the Aruba SSC Cloud offers is intelligent smart routing across 500 plus edge locations. So from wherever you are in the world, you're probably not far from one of our edge locations. So you have quick access into an on-ramp, and ultimately to those end resources that end user wants to access. IT admins can also leverage APIs and AI machine learning capabilities, so we can set very granular policies and turn any information that's gleaned from those connections into actionable intelligence. And then do it in a very simple way. It's easy to manage and monitor. So we can minimize the complexity by reducing point product solutions. So instead of having, I have one product for Swig, I have another one for CASB, I've got another one for ZTNA, and so on and so forth, another one for monitoring. It's all through one simple, easy to use interface. And it's all cloud-based, so it scales very easily as well. So whether you have, 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000 users, it's very simple, and it's very simple for you to deploy, because it's really just a subscription that you tell us how many you need, and boom, it happens, right? So you save money by reducing reliance on appliance-based security solutions as well. So the 4 pillars of SSC, kind of talked about them a little bit already, is, first we have zero trust network access. So we're securing access to private applications that might exist within your data center or in the cloud. Again, we're minimizing that application exposure by brokering those connections from that end user to that end resource. That end user never actually reaches that resource. They are basically connecting to a resource within the Aruba SSE Cloud, which brokers that connection and kind of serves it up, serves up that data or whatever it is they're trying to reach, while maintaining complete control over it. All right. The secure web gateway services, we can provide control access to internet resources as well. So the usual things that you would expect, block, different categories of things, the usual suspects. We can filter, provide DPI SSL services. If you're familiar with that, that's usually a very difficult challenge for, a non-prem device, because it takes a lot of compute horsepower to be able to do deep packet inspection over SSL connections. We're a cloud-based resource, so it's much simpler for us to go ahead and decrypt things on the fly and inspect them and rewrap them up and send them on their way. And we can also, as part of that, that's where we're doing all the malware scanning, and then things like artificial intelligence-based sandboxing as well. Cloud access security broker, so we can actually provide access to SaaS applications, protecting data losses through our own CASB service or others as well. So control, block, upload, download from Box, SharePoint, Facebook, Salesforce. So maybe we'll let people upload data so they can store it, but maybe we don't necessarily want them downloading data. So we can actually prevent the download of categories, certain files, and make sure that that data is secure. And then ultimately digital experience monitoring. So as an operator, being able to monitor it and make sure that everything is working correctly. So now we'll take a look at the SSE in action. So we have the end user kind of on the southbound side of the slide, and they're connecting into the Aruba networking SSE cloud. And from here, again, you kind of see the different backbones that we're utilizing between GCP, AWS, and Azure. And we're now able to go out. We're going to auto route the traffic and mediate the request to whatever resource it is that they're going to try to get to. All right. So as part of that user getting on, we could have been doing things like, doing, authentication against, different resources, ping identity or whomever. In this case, we're doing MFA. We're policy evaluating them to make sure that they get access to the appropriate things. As I mentioned previously, there's no pass-through of that connection. The whole connection is brokered. So that end user talks to the cloud, and the cloud on the back end is actually talking to those resources, makes those available to the end users, but always kind of is the intermediary. That end user never actually gets access to those resources. So they can't, again, get into the data center and move laterally, that sort of thing. Right? So we can automatically verify access policies. So again, based on the use context, we can provide adaptive access. So based on who that user is, what device they're using, their application, their content, do they have the SSE client installed? Maybe they don't. If they have the client installed, maybe they have more access than if they did not have it. But we can provide very fine-grained control for what they can actually get to. And then we can broker smart and surgical connections. So minimize the attack surface, again, prevent that lateral movement. Again, they're not in the data center, they are in the cloud, and their connection to resources is being brokered so that we have much better control, fine-grained control over what that end user can do. And as I mentioned, we're going to broker that connection, and end users get to that, those authorized applications as defined within their own potentially unique profile. And we're continuously inspecting and adapting access as needed and monitoring user performance. So that's part of the digital experience monitoring. We can actually see what that end user is doing. So maybe we want to check on, a user. Hey, what has this particular user been doing? Have they just logged in, and is everything going smoothly? Maybe they just logged in and walked away. We can see that sort of information as well. But we have a continuous kind of playlist of what a particular, what any particular user has been doing over the course of the day, and we can actually view that and make sure that we know what type of experience they're having as they're accessing resources. So it's a quick example. We have high reliability, availability, and scale. So as you can, on the right-hand side, we have an Atmos agent on some endpoint device, and we have an Atmos connector on the left-hand side. So that connector probably exists, on a server somewhere within a data center. That kind of looks like Houston, so I'll just say that's an HPE data center in Houston, Texas, thereabouts. And that agent on an endpoint device is connecting in. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to test all the different routes that it has available to it. And ultimately, what it's going to try to do is choose the best route at that given point in time. And at this particular point in time, it looks like using the Oracle backbone is the best solution for it to use. But it'll constantly test over the course of its, connection to those resources. It'll periodically check those connections, and if another connection back to that resource becomes better, it can switch. It can change. Maybe it's going to use Oracle out of the gate, but then switch over to GCP or so on and so forth. It really depends on how does the world look at this point in time. All right. So again, we're constantly measuring that telemetry across the multi-cloud backbone, and again, we have additional redundancy with auto load balancing across those different connections as well. It also provides better disaster recovery. So if one of those carriers has a problem, we can quickly switch to another. So again, business operations can continue as expected. So SSE is part of a broader zero trust ecosystem. All right, and what does that really mean? Well, Axis, HPE SSE provides controls like we just mentioned, things like zero trust and CASB, Secure Web Gateway, but we can also work with identity providers. So maybe when someone comes on, we want to authenticate them against another user, it's another source, maybe it's Okta, maybe it's Ping Identity. We integrate with those and can utilize those resources as well. Then there's also endpoint security. So maybe they have Microsoft Intune or SentinelOne running on those endpoint machines. And ultimately what this slide is kind of indicating is that, security is kind of like an onion, right? It's defense in depth, it's multiple layers, and Axis provides that policy-based connection to actually reach end resources, that an end user is supposed to be utilizing. All right, so you might also have things like Splunk or Logarithm running in the background as well. And then on top of that, using things like SD-WAN. So using an HP Aruba SD-WAN solution, to optimize the connection between multiple branch offices and help optimize those flows, or even when you're breaking out traffic from a branch office into the cloud and optimizing that again through the Axis cloud itself. So some things to look for when you're considering SSE. You want to have a focus on a unified access platform approach. And really what this kind of boils down to is, with the Aruba SSE solution, there is one page to manage all those different aspects that we've talked about. So whether we're talking ZTNA, SWIG, CASB, digital experiencing monitoring, it's all comes through one single interface. It makes it really simple. You don't have to bounce from one application to a second application to a 10th application, so on and so forth. Everything is accessible and managed regardless of the function that you're looking for. It's managed through that single interface that's presented as part of the SSE solution. Right? It has simplified policy, and it can inspect traffic for internet-based traffic, software as a service, and legacy applications as well, which is sometimes a problem for some competing solutions out there. So maybe you still have mainframes that are existing within your data center that people need to access. Maybe you need to have a VoIP solution, so you need to, ring a phone for you have a remote telemarketing staff or something, and you need to be able to, your call server exists within the data center. It needs to be able to reach out and ring that phone from the data center, which, for other solutions can be a problem, but with the Aruba SSE solution, we can make that happen. All right. We can make access across the globe via a cloud-based backbone. Again, I kind of mentioned we have AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle as some of our providers, but also provides that local edge capabilities. So you're not again calling from from the West Coast to the East Coast so that you can reach a resource somewhere in the Midwest. What you do is you hit the local on-ramp, and then your traffic is routed in a smart way to get to the best resource possible to serve the need. And there's AI powered detection. So anti-phishing engines, when we see traffic come through, we can look at that, we can inspect it, and use machine-based learning and instant response, deep level analysis to sandbox that traffic. So again, it's a cloud-based solution, so we have the compute horsepower that's necessary to provide that sort of functionality basically at our fingertips. We're already in the cloud, so we can spin up those resources to inspect that traffic, do that decryption of that SSL decryption, then look at explode that that file or whatnot within our sandbox and make sure that it's actually safe before we actually let it transit on its way. So deciding on our next steps together, could be, creating that that value assessment, receiving a customized demo, or identifying an initial use case. So whatever that use case might be, maybe it's zero trust network access, where a lot of people start out, receiving that demo, so we can actually, people can see it in action. We can set that up as well, and then creating the value assessment. So a lot of times it's not just about the bits and bytes on the wire. It's, hey, how does this actually affect my bottom line? What's it, how will this, financially affect my organization? And basically we have resources available to help, answer all of those questions and do that sort of analysis. Right, so that kind of wraps up my slide. Let me go ahead and stop sharing this.
Righty, let me go ahead and share mine and we'll get going. All right. Hey, everybody, my name is Nathaniel Scriven, as mentioned previously. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes a little bit, and we are going to get into a demo. I'm going to have a couple slides to cover some concepts in a lab topology, and then we're going to get right into it. So I am going to cover a couple things that Roger already covered, but we're going to go a little bit further in depth. So here we have, let's say that we have employees, whether it's internal employees, contractors, or people at the branch. Let's say that they want to access stuff in our data center or in our public cloud using ZTNA. So essentially, the path this is going to go, the user is going to request the access. We're going to verify their identity and also MFA, whether it's Ping, Okta, Azure, what have you. And then we're going to evaluate them for access. Right. So once they're evaluated for access against policy, then we're going to broker the connection. Now, what that really means is that when we're brokering the connection, unlike a traditional legacy VPN, the user is never directly on the network. They can look like they're on the network. They can act like they're on the network. They can feel like they're on the network, but they are never directly on the network, which is a big benefit. Every user flow is segmented and everything is inspected and visible. And also, as a part of the brokering, we are continuously authorizing every session. And what that means is that if a user status changes, their account gets disabled, you remove access to an application, they're going to get yanked out of that almost immediately. So you don't have to wait for them to log off. You don't have to wait for them to log on. You don't have to push a pack file. And with SSE pack files, that is a thing of the past, very easy to deploy and control access. Now, a benefit of our solution, or benefits, is that unlike some of our other competitors, we have a single platform for all of our technologies: ZTNA, SWG, CASB, digital experience management. It's all one single platform. You do not need to log into 3 or 4 different modules to build a policy. We also support agentless for web, SSH, RDP, Git, database access, and VNC. And as part of our demo, we're going to lean heavily into agentless and show that off as well. We mentioned that, visibility. And with a single platform, the flexibility to be able to make your policies however you want. For example, let's say that you want to have your agentless and your agent policy separated for more general access and have another SWG rule, your secure web gateway. You can make different policies for all those 3 for very general access. But let's say you have a contractor that or an end user where you want them to have their own SWG rule, their own agentless rule, and their own agent rule in the same policy. You can do that. You can mix and match the technologies however you need to. And it's simple. One thing about some of our competitors' solutions is that they're not easy to navigate, and they're not really all that terribly easy to deploy. We make it simple, not only for the users, but also for the person that has to manage it. Okay, so let's take a quick look at our demo environment. So essentially, we have 3 different locations. I have an HQ, I have an HQ2, and I have a resource in AWS. Now, that resource in AWS is connected via SD-WAN. I have an Edge Connect virtual appliance and tied into my SD-WAN fabric. And also, I have a physical Edge Connect over there at HQ2. What that's going to do is that we're actually going to build IPsec tunnels out to SSE. That way we can send traffic from clients that might not have the agent installed, make that right turn out to there for a single pane of glass web experience. Now, the first thing I got to do, actually, before that, what I want to do, my goal is to make this file server, this RDP application, this VYOS, and also an on-prem orchestrator for SD-WAN, and also the AWS resource. I want to make that reachable to the end user, but there's a couple things I want to do with this. I want it, to be completely agentless. Okay. Also, I want to obfuscate entirely what IP address these things are coming from. The end user should never know that the file server is at 10.0.0.192, and we're going to be able to achieve that. The first step that I have to do is that I need to install a connector as close to the applications that is possible, and that is going to establish a 443 UDP TCP connection outbound, no firewall holes needed, out to the SSD POPs to maintain that connection. And when all is said and done, the user is going to get access to these applications via their FQDN. So you can see here, files.scriven.tech, so forth and so on. And they'll be able to access this from a web portal. Also, you'll notice on SD-WAN site 2, marked in the green lines, I have those IPsec tunnels going up to the POP, and we'll also show that off in a couple of minutes. And also, now that AWS resource, I'm going to be able to access that by going into that connector over on HQ2, going through the SD-WAN, and then accessing it over that framework. Now, let's say that that's great and all, but I want to get closer to the application still. No problem. I can go ahead and install a connector in AWS, in Azure, in GCP, okay? And then also deploy them as needed. When it comes to our connectors, we do not charge for connectors. Go nuts. If you want to install 5, 10, 15, 20, you can do what you need to do, unlike some of our competitors that charge for instances. Also, very easy to spin up. 4 CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, 40 gigs of space. Done. Easy to spin up, easy to tear down. Almost disposable. They're so easy to work with. Okay. So now let's go ahead and jump into the demo. So here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause my agent here because I don't want the agent to be involved in this at the moment. And let me just make sure I'm sharing. Yep. Okay, great. So just so you know, my demo is set up so that I have a hotspot that is I have a dongle plugged into my VM, and that is then going to a hotspot on my phone. So I cannot get to any of these networks that are on my lab here without having the intervention of SSE. Let's go ahead and check out the user experience. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to log into the portal, and then I'm going to see all the apps I have available. But let's focus on the ones that we're talking about. So let's take a look at this file server. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pop this open, and it's going to take me directly to that file server. Let's see if I can log in. Excellent, I can log in. Okay, let's take a look at something like RDP, and let's take a look at this RDP guy. Now I can either open WebRDP or download an RDP launcher file. So let's go ahead and download that file. And I'm also going to hop in via the web. And this is going to give me a nice and fast HTML5 kind of experience popping into this guy directly. So I can either do this and get in, give him a second to pop in. All right, now I'm in. What if I want to use that file that I downloaded? I can do that. Let's go to my downloads. And let's pop in here. And I'm going to pop in transparently into that same session. Okay, so I can give someone a real tangible RDP experience. But let's say that I send this to somebody. I can actually send this to a resource, and then they can open it from their local machine. So this machine is now on my local machine. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to open this up. And what's going to happen is that there's always a veil of authentication. Okay. When I opened it up from where I was before, I was using that same session because I was coming from the same source address. But now that I'm coming from a different source address, I have to pass authentication before I can use this application. So let's go ahead and do that. Get that password. I thought it would autofill. Nope. Oh, all right. Let's see here. Yes. now that I'm authenticating through access, now I have access to that resource. So now I'm coming off the same session. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect to it, and I'm going to get in transparently. Give the guy a second to do his thing. There we go. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave this guy open for a second. Let's take a second look at something like maybe with a SSH. Now I can either open SSH up here in a tab like this, or I can choose to open it up with a client, either SSH or with terminal. And I like Windows 11 for this because the terminal comes pre-installed, which is handy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this string, I'm going to log in to that resource, boom, just like I'm on site. All right. Same kind of thing too. I can also send the I can send this credential to someone, and they can just open it up transparently from where they're at. And also with these web links, let's say that if I want to, let's take this guy. I can copy this link, and I can actually send the individual just a link to that resource. Let's say that they don't need access to a portal. Let's say that they just need, this one application. They can add it to their favorites and just treat it like any other resource. So it gives them the appearance of being on the network, but they never are, because we are brokering all these connections. So let's go ahead and decide that this individual here has outlived his usefulness, and he is no longer allowed to log in and access these resources. Let me bring this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the policy, and let me bring up that policy here. This policy here, I have him going for web apps. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to commit those changes, and very, very shortly, a couple of seconds, you're going to see all these guys are going to get kicked out. Boom, done. This one is also going to terminate. Done. And then if I try to access this, it's going to tell me that access is forbidden. It pulled me out of all these sessions in mid-stride. All right. So what if I go to where I downloaded that RDP file? Okay, let's see if I can open it. It's going to connect, but then once it connects, it's going to tell me this is no longer functional. You can't use this. Okay, and give it a second to pass authentication, and then it's going to say I can't get in. All right, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to re-enable that rule, just kind of show you how fast this works. I'm going to re-enable it. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to pop open that RDP again. It's going to connect very quickly. And I'm going to get back into that resource, and I'm back in. If I go ahead and reconnect to this fellow here, back in the resource. Okay. So constant authorization, much easier to pull access from resource from someone that maybe should not have it, or maybe their requirements have changed. Okay. So that's a look at our agentless solution. So if we take a look at the agent, so we have a big differentiator here called server initiated flows. If you've ever used an SSE product in the past, you may have noticed that it's really a one-way conversation. It's from the client to the server, and that's it, which is great for a lot of use cases, not great for all. Let's say you have a VoIP requirement. Let's say you're doing patching or endpoint management, and you're not using something like Entra SCIM or SCCM. You're still doing stuff on-prem. You really need that functionality, you might find, and for a lot of other platforms, this is a really sticky wicket. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect to the agent, and our agent is based on WireGuard, so it connects very, very quickly. I'm already connected very fast. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. Can I connect to my domain controller? I can. Client to server, easy, right? All right, let's go ahead and take a look. Let's jump into my into my domain controller. Oh, one thing too. Let me hop out of here. I'm going to do a quick IP config here, and we'll kind of show you what's going on. So usually, without server initiative flows, you're getting one of our synthetic addresses of a 100.65, right? So right now, I'm getting a real address. Okay, and also I'm going to get a DNS suffix because I have the application enabled. But what's important here is I'm getting assigned a real address from my connector. It's not synthetic. And I have routing on the other side to say, hey, if you want to get to the subnet, go to this address, which would be my connector. What this is going to allow me to do is I'm going to be allowed to make uninitiated traffic from the inside out to my client. Okay, let's go ahead and test that out. Alrighty. And that's this fellow right here. Perfect. I'm in there via 445. I can navigate the share. I can do whatever I need to. This guy's access remote.tech. I'm going to check that DNS record. And we can see here that yes, 120, 127 has successfully been registered with dynamic DNS. I don't know about you, but I've always had this problem with legacy VPN where the endpoints did not always register correctly onto DNS and makes administration a real headache. Not an issue with us. It just works. Another thing too, so along with now, when we say that this traffic is being brokered, what that also means is that you never get the real address of a resource. So for example, if I do an NS lookup of my domain controller, that is not my domain controller address. That is the synthetic return that I'm getting off Access DNS, okay? So the real benefit of that is because they're never on the network, they can't do port scans, they can't do recon attacks. They have no idea where they're going to for real. And that represents a huge increase in operational security. Same thing with if I want to go to my orchestrator, when I look that up, that where that's on network, that is not the real address, though it is reachable at that address. And now, if we're talking about user experience monitoring, what really makes us useful is the way that we're able to see all this traffic. Oh, you know what? I jumped ahead a second. I want to show you SWG. So if I go back under here, I have a SWG policy, okay? We're going to get into this in 1 second. So SWG is Secure Web Gateway. So as we can see here, I have a policy for my agent, and it says I'm going to block these categories, and I have a custom one there as well. Then I have a very similar category matching for stuff coming from my orchestrator, okay? Let's go ahead and see if we can get that policy to follow. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and try and go to Proxmox. It's one that I blocked. I love Proxmox to death, but it's a good example. I'm going to block this. So this is being blocked via SWG. All right, let's go ahead and go back into the portal, and I'm going to hop into the SD-WAN network. I'm going to go into HQ2 PC2, and we're going to try and access that same site from there. Okay, I do not have an agent actively running on here. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go into here, and then I am going to try and access the same site, and it's going to be blocked. Now let's take a quick look. And what's really handy about being able to use SSE like this is I can really pop in quite quickly into my orchestrator. So let's hop into the orchestrator and see exactly what that looks like. Now, while we would love for you to use our SD-WAN product, our SSE tends to be agnostic. You really just have to be able to build IPsec tunnels and have a technology that will allow you to make that right-hand turn out to the provider, and you can use it with almost any SD-WAN. So see here, I have 2 tunnels along with a backup going out to our Anycast DNS. Makes configuration pretty simple. And if I take a look at my flows here, and I can actually see that traffic is getting sent out my third-party tunnel, which would be Access right here. So everywhere I went was getting that right-hand turn, whoop, right at Access. And if I take a look at what we call our overlays, we can also see that I have Access chosen as my breakout, my prioritized breakout. So now that we've done that, now that we generated some traffic, let's take a look at our discovery information or our digital end user experience. All right, so if I go to Insights, I'm going to be able to see at a glance exactly where people are going, where they're coming from, and what they're using. And we can see here that this is blocked. We take a look in here, we can see it's been blocked by policy. If I want to see that a little bit more detailed, I can go into Exploration. And this is where I'm going to see all the agent traffic. All right, so let's see. So this IPsec, this is coming from Site 2. On that policy, and we see right here it's come from branch Site 2, and we keep scrolling down. We're going to see all. So here's also the policy block for proxmox.com. And if we scrub to the right here, get all sorts of good other information, especially reputation. We can actually build policy based on reputation. If something is less than trustworthy, we can actually block that with SWG as well. And with most of our flows, we get this handy trace ID. If we have an issue to where a flow is not working correctly, or we get blocked for a weird reason, if we think it's a false positive, we can take that trace ID, send it to support, and they will trace those connections throughout the entire framework and find out, exactly what happened and get back to you. Very, very useful tool. And finally, if we take a look at our network experience from our agent perspective, we can actually say, let's say that a user is saying that something is performing poorly. We can actually go in here, find their session. So, for example, let's check out this SMB back to dc1.scriven.tech. We check on the bottom here. It's going to say, I'm coming from this client. I'm going to this pop, out this zone, right? My connector zone, and then out to that destination. So I'm going to see those hops along the way. So very, very, very useful to kind of initially troubleshoot where a problem may be. And in terms of this being easy to manage, essentially, if I set my destinations, let's take a look at my orchestrator, for instance. All I'm doing here is I'm gonna create an app. I'm going to give it the FQDN because this is my connector is pointing towards the DNS for that zone. I'm going to tell, what port is it coming from? What protocol am I using? What zone am I going to go out of? And then I can say, I'm going to use either a rewrite for an access subdomain, or I can also use a domain that I own with a certificate and then a CNAME. Gives you kind of a unified link to where you don't have to worry about handing people out two links. Very handy. But this is kind of the easy button here. And I'm going to choose my IDP. Here I have Okta, I have Azure, I have the built-in IDP. I choose which IDP that they're going to sign on to, and then I can use tags. So if I use tags, I can go ahead and pick which applications I want to group together for easy policy assignment. So you can see here for my web apps, I have these applications tagged. Now, if I go to policy, and if I take a look at my web apps, we can see that I have demo web apps tagged instead of doing every individual app. And we also do policy, posture rather. I'm going to do this and then we'll close. Essentially, if we have posture, if I go to take a look at my enrolled agents, like for Windows, I can check on all these different variables. Am I part of a domain? Is my firewall on? Is my disk encrypted? So forth and so on. And if I fail any of those posture checks, then I'm going to automatically lose access to the applications that I was assigned to until I come back into compliance. And we'll do one last thing because we have a minute. So in my policies, which is super handy, I can also choose where should I be coming from as a source? What posture check am I going to have? Maybe I have a contractor who's only on contract for 6 months. I can set a time rule for him. Let's say if I want to set it so that, that contractor, he may be temporary, but also what I want to do is I know he shouldn't be working weekends. I'm gonna set this policy for working hours only, which is totally customizable. And then you can set time ranges, expiration dates, and lots of control over what you can do to make those applications available. And it's quick, easy to deploy, and even easier to use. That's what I got. Thanks for your time.
Awesome job. Thank you so much. We typically leave a little time at the end of these to answer any questions you guys might have. So if you do have any questions, feel free to plug them into Q&A. We can get into some of that. If you prefer, we could definitely take them offline. You have my contact information. Matter of fact, shortly, I'll be sending out a questionnaire to each of you to collect your shipping information and your choice of complimentary gift. So look out for that just shortly after this call wraps. Inside of that questionnaire, you can note the fact that you'd like a follow-up. We'd really love to follow up with each and every one of you and have a one-on-one conversation as it relates to your organization. So keep that in mind. Would definitely love to get some more time with you in the future. So I'll be sending that out shortly. But for sure, if you have any questions, feel free to plug them in. If there aren't any questions, though, of course, I'm happy to give you guys some time back. And for sure, we appreciate all the time that you've spent with us thus far today. Thanks for signing up, spending some time to learn about access security and everything it can offer your organization. Hope to hear from you on that questionnaire. Definitely let's set up some more time, dig a little deeper, go one-on-one, and we could do more of a demo scenario for your organization and your needs. So
Thank you, everyone.
yeah, I don't see any questions, so we'll give you some time back today. On behalf of TTI and HP Aruba Networking, thank you for taking some time with us today, and go have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.